Have you ever thought that someone close to you might be hiding a dark secret? If you want to find out the answer to this unsettling question, I invite you to stay until the end of this story. But before we continue, I want to ask you to subscribe. Yes, right now. If you are a true lover of mysteries that keep you on the edge of your seat, you won't want to miss what's coming next. So do you dare to subscribe? You won't regret it. Let's do it together. At the beginning of summer, students all over Pinebrook County were eagerly awaiting the end of the school year and the start of their long-awaited vacation. Among them was Claire Miller, a 14-year-old girl who lived in the small town of Cedarville, a place known for its tranquility and natural beauty. It was the morning of June 21st, 2002, a day like any other. Claire woke up early, got dressed, and went down to the kitchen where her mother, Karen Miller, was making breakfast. Her father, Mark Miller, was reading the newspaper like every morning. Claire, with her usual smile, had a glass of juice and said goodbye to her parents, assuring them that she would be back early after class. At 7:55, she left the house and headed for the bus stop, as she did every day. The day passed without incident until at 3 in the afternoon, the phone rang at the Miller's house. Karen answered, and on the other end of the line was Claire's teacher asking why she hadn't come to class. The question left Karen stunned. Claire had left that morning for school, so why wasn't she there? Claire had always been a cheerful and responsible girl. She was the youngest of 3 siblings, and although she preferred the tranquility of home and wasn't the most outgoing, she had a small group of friends she enjoyed spending time with. She loved reading, especially adventure stories, and had a special connection with animals. At home, she had 2 cats, Milo and Luna, whom she cared for with devotion. The news that Claire had not arrived at school deeply disturbed Karen and Mark. They immediately tried to contact her through her cell phone, but all calls went straight to voicemail. This behavior was completely out of character for Claire, which increased her parents' worry. But before we continue, I want to ask you to subscribe. As the hours passed and Claire showed no sign, worry turned to panic. Karen decided to stay home in case Claire returned, while Mark went out to search the neighborhood and the school's surroundings, asking neighbors and friends if they had seen her. But the search was fruitless. No one had seen Claire after she left home that morning. When night fell and Claire had not returned, the Millers decided to go to the police. The missing person report was taken immediately, and the local police began their search. The investigators started by questioning everyone who knew Claire, including her classmates, teachers, and neighbors. That's when the first disturbing clue emerged. A neighbor had seen Claire walking towards the bus stop, but then noticed that instead of getting on the bus, she veered off onto a path that led to a nearby wooded area. The information baffled the investigators and the family. Why would Claire have changed course? The police organized an extensive search of the nearby woods, using tracking dogs and search teams made up of community volunteers. For days, they scoured every inch of the area, but they found no trace of Claire. The young girl's disappearance was beginning to take a dark and mysterious turn. As the searches continued, investigators began to focus on those close to Claire. Among them was Tom Reed, Mark Miller's brother-in-law. Tom, 42, was a man known in Cedarville for his friendly and helpful nature. He had been married to Mark's older sister for almost a decade, and was very close to the Miller family. He had spent a lot of time with Claire and her siblings when they were younger, taking them on outings and helping them with their homework. However, as investigators delved into the relationship between Tom and Claire, disturbing details surfaced. In recent months, Tom had shown an unusually intense interest in Claire. He would often drive her to school, invite her out to eat, and give her expensive gifts, which began to make Claire uncomfortable and arouse suspicion in her parents. Karen recalled an incident that now seemed particularly disturbing. A few weeks before Claire's disappearance, Tom had taken Claire to the movies. When they saw Smanda. No, Totorn. His crud home, Claire seemed upset but refused to talk about it. She only mentioned that she preferred not to go out with Tom again. Karen had shrugged it off at the time, thinking it was just a simple disagreement. But now, with Claire's disappearance, those details were beginning to take on a new and worrying meaning. The investigators decided to dig into Tom Reed's past, and what they discovered was alarming. It turned out that Tom had been arrested in the 1990s for a case involving a young woman, although he had managed to avoid prison after reaching a plea deal. This detail, unknown to the Miller family, made Tom the prime suspect in Claire's disappearance. The police decided to place Tom under discreet surveillance. For several days they observed his behavior, noting that he seemed nervous and was acting strangely, as if he knew he was being watched. At the same time, investigators reviewed security camera footage from around the woods and nearby roads. On one of the cameras, located at a store a few miles from the Miller's house, a car similar to Tom's was seen driving around on the morning of Claire's disappearance. With this evidence, the police obtained a warrant to search Tom's house. During the search, they found several things that caught the investigators' attention. In the basement of the house, there was a locked room. Upon entering, they found a series of disturbing objects: notebooks with drawings and obsessive notes about Claire, photographs of the young woman taken without her knowledge, and a box with small personal items that belonged to her, such as a keychain and a bracelet that had disappeared days before. But most disturbing was the discovery of a blanket with stains that were immediately sent for forensic analysis. While awaiting the results, investigators decided to question Tom. During the interrogation, Tom was initially cooperative, but as the questions became more incisive, he began to become evasive and finally asked for a lawyer, refusing to answer any more questions. The results of the forensic analysis were devastating for the Miller family. The stains on the blanket turned out to be blood, and the DNA matched Claire's. This finding was enough for the police to arrest Tom Reed on suspicion of kidnapping and possible murder. The news of his arrest shook the Cedarville community, who could not believe that someone so close to the Miller family could be involved in such a heinous crime. The case against Tom Reed grew stronger as more evidence came to light. Investigators found phone records showing that Tom had called Claire several times in the days leading up to her disappearance, although the family was unaware of these calls. They also discovered that he had been watching Claire's movements, something that was evidenced in the notes found at his house. The trial of Tom Reed began in March 2003. The prosecution presented a strong case based on the physical evidence and the inconsistencies in Tom's story. In addition, several witnesses testified to seeing Tom acting strangely in the days following Claire's disappearance, which further increased suspicion against him. During the trial, Tom remained impassive, denying any involvement in Claire's disappearance and claiming that he was being framed for reasons he could not explain. His lawyers tried to cast doubt on the validity of the evidence, but the jury did not take long to reach their verdict. Tom Reed was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Despite the conviction, Claire's body was never found, leaving the Miller family without closure. Anne and Mark dedicated the following years to fighting for the memory of their daughter, supporting causes that sought justice for the victims of disappearances and unsolved crimes. Their pain was immeasurable, but so was their determination to find answers. In 2022, 20 years after Claire's disappearance, the Cedarville community held an event in her memory. Although Claire never returned, her memory lives on in the hearts of those who loved her. The Millers have learned to live with uncertainty, but they have never given up hope that someday they will find the answers they so desperately crave. If you made it this far, you know that these stories are not for the faint of heart. And if you really enjoyed this story, be sure to subscribe. You won't want to miss the next story that will keep you on the edge of your seat. See you next time